Hello, BookTube. I've got a little bit of mail for you today on a chilly, overcast Sunday. Sunday that didn't start off all that well, as you're going to see, because we have periodicals in addition to packages. One periodical in particular. We have the Sunday New York Times. The print Sunday New York Times arrives here at the doorstep of Hyde Cottage every Sunday morning, and I haven't dug into the main body of the paper yet. The main body of the paper is an amazing feat to do. Hundreds of pages of close-packed prose every Sunday. That is an amazing thing to do while you're getting out a daily paper. But I did read, I did read the Sunday Times, the lead article for the New York Times Magazine, and it's infuriating. This is infuriating. It's all about the National Enquirer and their catch and kill policy, where they will learn about some juicy story and pay not to run it. Pay to sit on it, and threaten people. And, of course, a lot of those juicy stories end up involving Donald Trump, who has been committing crimes in New York City for 40 years. And this is playful. I mean, look at the type font. Isn't that playful? And then you get to the story itself, and look at how playful it is. Isn't that great? That's just playful. It's so much fun. What a fun New York story. The author is lying throughout the piece. The author knows more, a lot more than the piece says. The author doesn't even hint at it. You wouldn't have to break an NDA of any kind to hint at it. No, this is just the same kind of softball handling that this criminal has been receiving his entire life. You owe $500 million in a judgment? Oh, we don't have any precedent. There's no New York law on our side, but we're going to reduce that to $150 million. Is that okay? I mean, we'll go lower if that's not okay. No precedent of any kind, no legal reason to do that. Just we're going to make it easier on you. To say nothing of the fact that the corrupt Trump judge in Florida, in the most serious case against him, a case of actual high treason, a case that got people killed, stealing, retaining, hiding, lying about, and fencing the most private classified documents that the United States government produces. Dead bang guilty. Just dead bang guilty. The boss wants the server deleted. Tell me, has the boss ever asked for the server to be deleted? Before this day, did you know the boss knew the server existed? No, he's never even noticed that. Never talked about it before, but now he wants it deleted. The corrupt Trump judge in that case is just working for his benefit. She is just on his payroll. And despite whatever talk you might hear in the commentariat, she is not going to be removed by the appeals court. She's going to stay on the case, and she's going to bury it. She's going to dismiss it. A dead bang black letter law case of conviction for a former president of treason. She's going to dismiss the case, and that is much bigger than a court simply we'll shave $300 million off what you owe. Is that okay? We don't want you to have a bad day or anything. That's bad. A Trump judge in Florida simply kicking a case in which a former president is completely guilty is worse, and even worse than that is coming soon. Coming very soon, coming within the month. The United States Supreme Court granting Donald Trump, and only Donald Trump, something called presidential immunity, where he is not convictable for any crime whatsoever. Literally placing Donald Trump, and only Donald Trump, their judgment when they make it, will exclude other living ex-presidents and the current president and all future presidents, unless they're him. They will grant only him presidential immunity, meaning that he literally could kill somebody on Fifth Avenue and not suffer any penalty for it. That's coming. So we're right now in the middle of this spectrum, and all of it comes about as a result of treating him as though he were different from anyone else in this country. And this is a perfect example of that. If the subject of this article in the New York Times Magazine weren't someone that the New York Times editors are afraid is going to come to power and have the ability to crush them in their own printing presses, we're going to put your body through your printing press just because it would be fun to do. Stephen Miller's going to stand there while a bunch of muscular red hats put you through your own printing press. Everyone in the New York Times wonders whether or not that's going to happen. And this is the kind of crap you run when you're trying to hedge your bets. If it weren't this person, if it were anyone else, this would read very different. But that, believe it or not, was not the thing about this issue that enraged me the most. It was the New York Times Book Review, which, for good or ill, is the most influential book review in the English-speaking world. And this is the cover. 50 years of Stephen King. All these authors are going to get together and talk about how incredible it is. It's a multi-page roundup of people writing in. They've been solicited. They're going to write in with what Stephen King has meant to them over the years. And absolutely forbidden in this piece. Forbidden, just not used, probably not even submitted, but certainly not used in the piece, will be anybody writing in and saying, I can't believe how bad this guy is. What an unbelievable farce that he has been such a best-selling author for so long with no talent at all. No one writing in. A lot of these people are writers. None of them are going to say, well, I figured if he could do it, I could do it. Anybody could do it if he can do it. They're not going to do that. Instead, they're going to praise him for his humanity and his insight into the human condition and his unerring instinct for what frightens us and his finger on the pulse of the zeitgeist and all kinds of tablespoon crap like that. And it's right there in the middle of the book review. The book review often has things against it anyway. It's often working my one good nerve, but to have a piece like this, we're just going to move on. We're going to move on from the New York Times here. I'll chuck it onto the chair. We're going to move on from the New York Times to a couple of packages, and we'll hope that they turn things around. Because I don't think either one of them is going to be a Stephen King novel. So let's see what this first one is. It's a finished copy. Oh, okay, great. All right. This is an April release. I have not got to this. I have it, and I have not got to it. This will be my kick in the rear to do this. I'll put this on the reading for tonight. This is a finished copy of Robert Sullivan's book, Double Exposure, Resurveying the West with Timothy O'Sullivan, America's Most Mysterious War Photographer. And this is by the guy that did the book Rats, that had it. The American version had an illustration of the island in the shape of a rat. Timothy O'Sullivan is America's most famous war photographer. You know his work even if you don't know his name. A Harvest of Death, taken at Gettysburg, is an icon of the Civil War. He was also among the first photographers to elevate what was then a trade to the status of fine art. The images of the American West he made after the war, while traveling with the surveys led by Clarence King and George Wheeler, display a prescient awareness of what photography would become. Years later, Ansel Adams would declare his work surrealistic and disturbing. At the same time, we know very little about O'Sullivan himself, nor do we really know, much more about the landscapes he captured. Robert O'Sullivan's Double Exposure sets off in pursuit of these two enigmas. The book documents the author's own road trip across the West in search of the places, many long forgotten or paved over, that the other O'Sullivan pictured. It also stages a reckoning with how the changes wrought on the land were already underway in the 1860s and 70s, and how these changes were a continuation of the Civil War by other means. Sullivan, known for his probing investigation of places in the pages of The New Yorker and of books like Rats and My American Revolution, has produced a work that, like O'Sullivan's magisterial portraits, photos of geysers and hot springs, exposes a fissure in the American landscape itself. And we're told that he's the author of numerous books. He was born in New York City, worked for many years in Portland, Oregon, now lives in Philadelphia, and never at any point in the pub sheet or in his bio note does the book answer, the publicity material answer, the one and only question that anyone has. You're thinking it yourself. You're asking the question yourself, and so am I. Are these two related? Nope. I imagine you're going to have to dig into the book to find that out if they're distantly related. But anyway, let's move on. Then we have a box, and then we'll be done with a little Sunday mail. Sunday mail is always nice. It keeps the spice flowing instead of having a bleak and barren break. What have we got here? Oh, okay. All right. This comes out in early May. This is by David Ebert and Mark Dando, and it is a field guide to sharks, rays, and chimeras of the east coast of North America. Oh my. The waters off the east coast of North America are home to an amazing variety of sharks, rays, and chimeras. This groundbreaking, comprehensive, easy to use field guide. I don't know how easy to use this is. It's pretty heavy. It's pretty big to be in a backpack. Obviously, the usable field guide size is a third this size. But this book covers all 173 species found along the eastern seaboard of the United States and Canada, including Bermuda and the Bahamas, and extending into the Gulf of Mexico and the Yucatan Peninsula. These are all the species that are encountered in the shallow waters of estuaries and coasts and in open ocean, including rarely seen deep-sea species. I have seen all three. Oh, no, I've seen two of these. I haven't seen this thing. I've seen hammerhead shark. I was in a saltwater marsh, and I had just crossed a fairly deep channel. I had my canoe on my shoulders, and I had my dogs were just paddling along on either side of me. We crossed a fairly deep channel. It came up to about my chin for a minute or two, and then we were crossing. Then we were steadily ascending on the other side. We got up onto the other side. And I checked to make sure that everything was all right. I checked to make sure that everybody was with me, that nobody drifted off or drifted downstream or whatnot. And we started to hunker down and figure out where we were and what we were going to do next. And I don't think it was more than 20 minutes later that a hammerhead shark swam up that channel, just as clear as day. It was right. It was like 5 feet away. I could almost reach out and touch it. Which means that hammerhead certainly knew that we were crossing, and was just confused as to what we were, and didn't take the risk of picking off one of my beagles that was floating there like a little hors d'oeuvre. But anyway, lavishly illustrated throughout, this must-have guide includes detailed species accounts describing key identification features, habitat, biology, and status, what these field guides always do now. It also features illustrated key guides that enable users to accurately identify species, comparison plates of similar species, dentition plates, and illustrations of egg cases where known. This is an essential guide for fisheries management, trade regulation, and shark conservation. Oh, well, okay. It's an essential guide for fisheries management, but you also want to tell me that it's an enjoyable book, right? You don't want to sell it that way, right? So let's see. Oh my, very nice. Very nice. You get everything here. This is exactly, and notice you might have wondered what they mean by dentition guide. Well, it's because if you're going to find if you're going to find a sign of one of these animals, you're almost certainly going to find teeth instead of the animal itself. You're unlikely to encounter a rhino ray, for instance, but you might very well encounter one of these spikes and need to know what it is, and this will define that for you. Oh, this is lovely. Oh, goodness gracious. So you've got photographs, but you've also got original illustrations of every single aspect, every single molt ratio, every single stage of adolescence and full growth. Oh, incredible. Just incredible. There's an oceanic white tip. I've seen my share of them. They can be a little bit dainty in size. Are you going to tell me? So you've got a sliding scale there at the side for size and weight. Yeah, you've got a sliding scale on the side for weight and a sliding scale for length. Oh, this is really good. And you've got this key guide for at-a-glance identification of a whole bunch of stuff. So you want to look at the beginning of the book. You want to look at what these keys mean. So how plentiful is it? How dangerous is it? How likely are you to encounter it in shallow water, etc., etc. My, very nice. This is just a gigantic guide to sharks, and you've got the shaded in area here of where they're found. Incredible. Oh man, incredible. The only problem that I have with this sort of a thing is that they're almost unreviewable. Guidebooks like this are almost unreviewable. I mean, I can check with the publisher to see if maybe they can get me a nice clear shot of some of the artwork in here. I can show that. But I'm not going to catch this thing in any mistakes. Uh, and there's not going to be anything in the way of prose here. I almost said artistry, but of course this is full of artwork. It's just, you know what I mean. This is just conveying information. That's pretty hard to review. I will try. I will try, definitely. Fantastic. So when did we say this was? This is early May? Yeah, this is early May. My May shelf is firming up. Very nice. Well, not necessarily the chimeras or the rays, but I guarantee you that you have been, if you have been in the water on the eastern seacoast, you have been near one of these sharks. A friend of mine, in his own day, a fairly famous oceanographer, uh, pointed out, just as a matter of fact, he said wasn't really interested in arguing with it, didn't want to hear your anecdotal evidence to the contrary. And I believe him. He said, if you've ever been in the water, you've been within 10 feet of a shark who knew you were there and came within 10 feet in order to examine you. I firmly believe that. I've certainly known that to be true myself, which just makes me more and more mind-boggled when I watch. It used to be that I would just get accounts in travel memoirs, but now there are whole YouTube channels devoted to good-looking young people sailing alone or in all sorts of picturesque locations. And they live online. They live by their sponsorship deals. They live by their AdSense money on YouTube, and that allows them to film themselves doing all of these wonderful catamaran adventures. And I always am just staggered when they walk out, onto the deck of their little craft and dive into the water. I'm just staggered when I see that. You are playing the odds. You are spinning a wheel. If they went instead into the main cabin of their vessel, sat down at the table, took out a revolver and spun the chamber and then pulled the trigger at their head, their comments field would be absolutely full of people saying, what on earth? And it wouldn't matter that they say, well, there's only one bullet. The odds are hugely in my favor. It's only one bullet. Everyone in their comments field would be saying, yes, it was only one bullet, but if the bullet is in the chamber when you pull the trigger, you end everything. You lose it all. So why would you risk that for no reason whatsoever? Always amazes me when I watch that. It always amazes me when I used to see it happen, used to see it done. I firmly believe, my old friend, that if you have been in the water, you've been near a shark, whether you know it or not. But anyway, this is a joy to get today, and it will certainly go a long way to compensate for a gigantic, stupid hymn of idiotic praise to one of the worst writers working today. In the New York Times Book Review, just an obvious sign of a completely divergent philosophy. If you can run, I'm not talking about whether or not the encomiums in there are accurate. They aren't accurate. This guy is bad. I'm talking about the editorial decision to run such a thing in the first place. Just means that there are two sides of this fence. There's the critic watchdogs and they're the cheerleaders. And the critic watchdogs, it might be a little bit abrasive when you see them rip apart something that you like. But you can trust they'll also rip apart something that might waste your time and that you don't have time to examine beforehand yourself. You're trusting them to do that. On the other side of the fence, well, it might feel good for a cheerleader to praise something that you like, but you can't trust them because they're going to praise everything. They're going to praise where praise is not warranted. They're going to praise, in other words, something that somebody else likes that you don't like. It's just... And you shouldn't be in the business of cheerleading anyway. That you're a book review, for Pete's sake. You're not. Anyway, it's going to be tough. I'm going to have to grapple. I've already read some of the pieces in that book review, some of the actual book reviews. Thank God they didn't just turn the whole thing over to Stephen King. I've read some of the book reviews. They didn't please me either. But I'm going to have to grapple with that whole tribute on the inside, paying utterly uncritical, fawning tribute to a popular author in a book review. How are you going to recover from that? How are you going to recover? Anyway, I could just take this book and hug it to me because there are giant sharks in this book. I did actually get a giant shark book, so that's going to have to compensate. But I'm going to wrap up this Sunday mail haul, and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.